So you want to build a camper van, but you have no experience building anything at all? Well, that was the exact same position that we were in just over a year ago. But after many late nights and a suspicious number of trips to Home Depot, we have finally converted this empty cargo van from this to this. Now, we got all the amenities in here. We got a full kitchen, we got a bathroom, we got an office space. We even have a bed that lifts up and down from the ceiling. And in this video, we're gonna be showing you guys the entire build process, everything that we did start to finish, because if two dummies like us can figure it out, literally anyone can do it. Okay, let's go. So the first step to any camper van build is obviously to buy a van. You gotta buy one. We found this Ford Transit nearby that was previously used as a pure later delivery vehicle. And after crying about draining our savings, we brought it home and started our conversion. Since it was a used van, and let me tell you, they did not take good care of this thing. We had to clean the crap out of it and deal with all the little dings and scratches and rust spots that were basically all over the place. We sprayed the floors with Rust-Oleum paint so we could start with a clean slate. This was dumb. Don't do this. I totally underestimated how much paint it would take, and I had to buy way too many rattle cans, and I should have just bought, the roll-on version. It would have saved a lot of money. Next, we lined parts of the floor and walls with sound deadening material. This helps with reducing things like road noise when we drive, and you really don't need that much of it unless maybe, I don't know, you're building like a recording studio in your van. You do you. We were now able to start our subfloor. We used a table saw to rip some 2x6s into 1-inch strips to be used as furring strips for our floor. That's a fancy word, huh? Furring strips. It comes from the French word fourrer, which means to line or sheathe something. We painted the strips with mold and mildew primer and screwed them all together to form our framing grid. Then we cut out some panels of 1-inch XPS insulation board to fill in all the gaps in between the framing. Now it was time to cut our subfloor itself. We took the factory floor liner that came with the van and traced it onto some 3/4-inch marine grade plywood. This is really expensive plywood, so no pressure, guys. We were also still learning to use all the different tools that we had recently bought, so trying to be extra careful here. We used a circular saw and a jigsaw to cut this out. After test fitting the floor, which worked out great, we painted it with the same mold and mildew primer from before. Afterwards, we glued down the framing grid as well as the insulation boards before filling all the gaps with expanding foam insulation. Once we cleaned it all up, we glued and screwed down the plywood and had a completed subfloor. Nice to spend 2 weeks on a project that no one will ever see again. Our next project would be our windows. This is where things start to get scary because we'd be cutting actual holes in the actual van body. If you mess this up, it's gonna be painful and expensive. These windows are from a company called Van Windows Direct, and their kit comes with all the different adhesives, primer, and hardware that you need. We traced out a line that we would follow for our cut, and we drilled our first pilot hole into the van itself. Now we're past the point of no return. We used a jigsaw and just did our best to take it slow and steady and successfully cut our first hole in the van.
Oh my god, there's a hole in the van.
After filing down the sharp edges and painting the exposed metal, we installed the trim piece that would cover up our terrible looking cut and prep the exterior for the window. The adhesive that it comes with has to be applied really evenly to prevent leaks, so it's important to touch up any areas that are uneven. And finally, we brought in the window for final install and seated it into place. By the time we got to the rear windows, we were basically pros, or at least a little less sweaty. The next part of the build would be our swivel seats. Swivel seats provide an easy way to expand the space in your van and incorporate the factory seats into your floor plan. On the passenger seat, easy peasy. You just undo a few bolts and the swivel goes right on top and you put it all back together. So simple. Of course, the driver's seat is going to be the same, right? Right?
Wrong.
On the driver's seat, it's more complicated because there's all this stuff in the way. Why is there all this stuff here? Didn't they know I was going to be doing this? So anyway, the van starter batteries and other electrical components are here and we have to move those. Why do we have to move those? Well, because there's this whole e-brake in the way and you have to physically lower the entire e-brake in order for the swivel to even work. And to do that, you have to cut off some bolts and do all this stuff. And did you know there are different drill bits for different types of metal? I didn't know that. Look at me here all stupid drilling into steel with a regular bit that doesn't do anything. Anyway, we got it installed and now we have 2 swivel seats. We turned our attention to the van walls and installing our framing. The plan was to take strips of wood and attach them to the wall using riv nuts. You have to use this fancy riv nut tool to install these, and basically what it does, it creates these threaded inserts that you can attach a bolt into. Alternatively, you could just screw these boards directly to the van metal, which would probably have been like a million times easier. Since we're using rib nuts, we have to pre-drill the boards before we mount them. You have to mark exactly where each rib nut is on the board before you pre-drill it. And it's really easy to get wrong. It's funny, we ended up using lipstick to make imprints on the wood so we knew where to drill. But we've also seen other people use things like Play-Doh. I mean, whatever works, right? Anyway, these wood planks would serve as attachment points for things like walls, cabinetry, or whatever else we wanted to mount. However, looking back on it all, we probably didn't have to go so crazy, and we probably could have saved quite a bit of weight if we didn't use as much of it. We decided to finish up our floor next and started installing vinyl planks. The flooring we chose is called loose lay vinyl planks, which is different from the regular tongue and groove ones because they don't click together. We glued down some sections of it and laid down the rest. They're pretty easy to work with. You can score them and snap them in half, no problem, but make sure you stagger them correctly or else you're gonna end up with something looking like this.
Brother,
We loved how they turned out, but they do add a lot of weight, so if I were to do this all over again, I probably would have waited until all of our furniture and cabinets were installed and then laid the flooring around it to save weight. Probably could have saved my back too.
I'm old, Gandalf. I'm beginning to feel it in my heart.
Back to the windows again. We wanted to add a couple windows in the back area that would open for ventilation. We bought these from a company called Wilderness Vans, and they have a built-in bug screen and blackout shade. Both super helpful, especially the bug screen, because the last thing you want to deal with are bugs. You know where there are bugs? Everywhere. They provide a nice template that you can use to trace out your cut, which was really helpful, and I definitely felt a lot more comfortable this time around cutting into the side of the van. It turned out pretty good. We gave the windows a test fit and cleaned up some of the edges before applying our adhesive sealant. The window has an interior wood trim piece that it kind of cinches to, and the trim ring provides a finished look and has the built-in shade and bug screen. We pushed forward and started insulating the walls and ceiling of the van. Now, I know not a lot has happened visually yet with this van, but we're getting there, trust me. We're using 3M Thinsulate and spray adhesive, and we covered most of the big sections. The metal body of a van transfers a lot of heat and cold from outside, so it's really important to have some kind of insulation. At the same time, we started pre-running all of our wires for our entire electrical system. For things like outlets and switches and appliances, it's important to have at least some kind of an idea for your layout at this point and where things are going to go generally. You should stay organized, draw it all out, and really consider how you're going to be using it all. After the installation and wiring, we quickly built out some boxes to finish up the areas around the newly installed windows. Okay, time to get on the roof of the van. We had a lot of different things to install up there, and we started with our air conditioner. This is the Nomadic X2 12-volt AC, and our plan was to install it in the back of the van where our bed would eventually go. We marked and cut the hole, did all the normal prep stuff, and then glued down the foam gasket that comes with the kit, and then hoofed the AC up on the roof for a test fit. We decided to install some additional automotive weather stripping for more waterproofing, and then tighten down the brackets that hold the AC to the roof. And make sure you leak test everything, otherwise you're going to be dealing with some fun surprises later.
Look.
Oh yeah, plus we have
Another leak.
another leak. We moved on to our next roof projects, which would be two different fans. One's like the standard max fan that they use in camper vans and RVs, and we're also using this other smaller dome one that would go in our bathroom. For these fans, we bought these custom Ford Transit roof adapters from a company called DIY Van. These are basically 3D printed adapters that sit perfectly in the grooves of the roof, and it creates like a nice flush surface for your install. We cut out both of the holes, cleaned them up, and then glued the adapters to the roof. We then test fitted the fans and pre-drilled some holes and created interior wood trim pieces that the fans would screw into. Then cinch everything down, and then use sealant on all the screw points and around the fans to create a fully waterproof seal. Next on the list was our roof racks. This was made by a company called CAMPERVAN and would hold things like our solar panels and rooftop deck. They bolt down into these factory threaded holes that you have to use a heat gun and pry tool to get access to. The roof rack gets mounted on these spacer blocks and lines up perfectly with the roof of the Ford Transit. The kit also comes with a front fairing for better aerodynamics and a side mount ladder that really gives it those adventure vibes. We turned our attention to the interior ceiling. Now that we finished insulating and pre-wiring, we could start covering up some of these sections. We're going with cedar shiplap planks. Shiplap's still in style, right? Right? Anyway, we painted them white before nailing them to our ceiling. We also drilled out our holes for our lights, and we're going with these silver puck lights that'll be dimmable. Near the front of the van, it's a little more complicated because the roof curves a lot, and the planks that we were using were 1/2 inch thick, so we had to use this fancy technique called kerf bending in order to make the pieces of wood bend enough to fit on this part of the ceiling. You basically cut a bunch of small notches into the wood that doesn't go all the way through, and it gives it more flexibility. Basically like IKEA meets origami.
So we have finally
Raise the roof!
That's good.
Okay, we were finally ready to start building actual furniture. The first would be a bench that would house all of our electrical components. We wanted it to be able to extend outwards into a daybed, as well as have the seat hinge upwards to provide access to storage. We made all of our furniture and cabinetry using maple plywood from Home Depot. We brought in some of our electrical and plumbing components just to line things up and start visualizing the spacing of everything. This is when our decisions are going to start having permanent consequences for the rest of our build, so it's important to stay super organized, because once everything's built out and screwed down, it's in for good, and really want to make sure we get this right. On the other side of a bench would be a complete vertical wall, which will make sense once we get more into this build. We took a piece of cardboard to scribe out a template that matches the curved van walls. Rarely is anything square inside of a van, so you have to learn to cut irregular shapes and sizes. Plus, this plywood is pretty pricey, so I didn't want to buy it twice. Before getting too far into the bench build, I wanted to get a lot of our electrical done since this is where it would all live. At the heart of our system are 900 amp hours worth of lithium batteries. Our plan is to have, inverter, solar charger, alternator charger with a big battery bank so we can go off-grid for a really long time. I first planned out how all the components would line up physically on the wall before hooking everything up. I connected all the batteries together before installing components like our main fuse, master switch, bus bars, our inverter, all that good stuff. We hooked up all the wires that we had set up from before that would go to all of our different plugs, outlets, and other appliances. We also ran a line that would go to our van starter battery located under the driver's seat. And with that, our electrical system was complete. Overkill? Maybe, but Netflix doesn't watch itself. Once the electrical was done, we could finish building the bench. Like I said before, we wanted to design a bench that could extend as well as hinge up. We attached these heavy-duty drawer slides on the bench seat and then ripped a bunch of half-inch boards to span the top of the seat. It worked out pretty good, and we finished our first piece of furniture. During this process, we got our van vinyl wrapped. We wanted something that wasn't just a standard white van creeping around, so we picked this nice blue color. Once the wrap was done, we were able to finish the rest of our roof projects like solar panels and rooftop deck. We have two 220-watt solar panels for a total of 440 that are attached to aluminum crossbars and then bolted to the roof racks. We also created a small plastic junction box that all of our roof wires would run through. We hooked up all of our solar panels and then started installing our deck. We're using Trex composite deck boards that are super durable, but also pretty heavy. If I could do this part over again, I might just go with like a lighter wood material because this stuff adds up quick. We love the look of it though, and now we have a nice spot to hang out on the roof of the van. We turned our attention back inside and started figuring out the cabinetry that would sit on top of our water system. This is the part of the van build where many things start overlapping and it felt like we were working on 3 to 4 different projects all at the same time. Anyway, we finished building the walls for the rear section as well as these built-in storage shelves. We also hooked up our first outlets and it was exciting to see things start to finally take shape. We also started building our bed, which would go on this motorized bed lift system. This is actually a kit that we found on Alibaba and it's worked out pretty well. It's an aluminum frame with a built-in electric motor that pulls on these seatbelt brackets to make the bed go up and down. We love this feature of our van because it allows us to have this full hangout area underneath the bed for during the day, and at night we just press a button and our bed comes down from the ceiling. We were also working on our plumbing during this time. We have a 30-gallon freshwater tank that would live on the rear passenger side of the van. We have a water pump, an accumulator tank, and a 2.5-gallon electric water heater. We're using good old-fashioned PEX piping, which is a cheap and easy way to hook up water systems in your van. We got all the fittings that we could ever need, as well as the specialty PEX crimping tool. We prepped our water tank, as well as installed a level gauge sensor, and then started hooking everything up. We drilled a hole in the floor so we could have a breather tube and drain for the tank. We then used heavy-duty ratchet straps to hold down the tank itself. We also wanted to make sure that we would have access to the main plumbing system and that all of it was removable if needed. We also installed a water inlet so we could fill the tank, and now our water system was ready to be hooked up to our eventual sink and shower. We went back to our cabinetry now that the plumbing was done. We cut a piece from an IKEA countertop to make a slide-out table for eating meals and working on. Underneath that is a large drawer for storing clothes and other big items like board games, things like that. We also included a laundry hamper to put our dirty clothes. We brought the cabinet back into the van and attached it to our wall and then built even more drawers for the rest of our clothing. Our drawer designs are pretty simple, they're just half-inch plywood all the way around. You could probably save some weight by using 1/4-inch bottoms for the drawers. After the drawers, we cut out the rest of the countertop, then painted everything to finish up the rear cabinetry. We then finished off our L bench and created a small garage storage area. We're definitely prioritizing interior living space in this van because we have 3 dogs and we don't really carry big gear like mountain bikes, so really don't have a need for a large garage space. We've actually tweaked this area slightly since finishing the van and have now extended the L bench even further and combined our large drawer and laundry bin into one thing. We do have a heater installed in this van. This is actually the one part of our build that we had a shop install because at that time we weren't that confident yet and we didn't want to deal with the trouble of dropping our fuel tank in order to hook it all up. This turned out to be a mistake though, as the shop installed it incorrectly and it resulted in a melted fuel line that could have been really dangerous. You can check out that video here. We really do like this heater though. It hooks up directly to the van gas tank, so there's no additional fuel to carry, and it keeps us toasty warm whenever we're camping somewhere cold. At this point, we felt like we'd made some serious progress and we're pushing forward to the front half of the van. We tackled our kitchen first and created another wall that would house the cabinetry for our fridge. We're putting a large 12-volt fridge and freezer from a company called Unique. The fridge would sit on a raised platform and underneath would eventually be a large drawer. Above the fridge would be a shelf that our oven sits on. On the other side would be the start of all of our kitchen cabinetry. All the framing and structure for these cabinets are 3/4 inch plywood, and we added toe kicks in this section so we can stand in the kitchen comfortably. We framed out the rest of the cabinets and started visualizing where our sink and stove would live and how it all come together. We built a cubby that would sit on the kitchen wall that would house things like our light switches as well as kitchen stuff like spices and cooking oil. We continued with the same IKEA countertop from before and cut out the piece that would be in the kitchen. The van walls have a weird taper, so it's important to measure many times for this countertop cut. We then marked and cut out where our sink and cooktop would be and put it all together. This was looking great and I celebrated by hitting my head on the bed.
Ow!
Still getting used to the spacing in here. We started tackling all the drawers in the kitchen. In an effort to maximize every square inch, we also put in toe kick drawers so we could utilize this part of the cabinet. Apparently we're allergic to wasted space. We mounted these on push to open slides so it's easy to just push the drawer with your foot and it'll pop open. We continued on with the rest of the drawers and plumbed the kitchen sink and drainage. We would eventually install a gray water tank in this van but wanted to finish the rest of the kitchen first. We finished the drawers and added things like space for a garbage bin and tip out shelves. We also added one upper kitchen cabinet that was built out of white oak. We wanted a bit of an accent on this upper cabinet, which is why we went with a different wood. And with that, kitchen was complete. The end was in sight and we were getting close to finally finishing this van. The last major project of this van would be our bathroom. This would sit next to our fridge cabinet and I've already pre-run the hot and cold lines from our plumbing system. I mounted the shower valve to the wall and tested it for leaks. We added some framing strips to this wall and then attached a thinner 1/4 inch piece that would become the actual bathroom wall. So the spot that this shower is going happens to be right next to one of these van structural pillars, so we need to work around that. We decided to make a custom fiberglass shower pan. We began by marking out where the drain would go and drilled what would be the final hole in the body of the van. After almost a year of building, we were finally near the finish line. We finished putting together the wood base and then got all of our fiberglass and epoxy materials. Because hey, we thought it'd be fun to make our own shower pan. Spoiler alert, it was not fun. If you've never worked with fiberglass and epoxy before, definitely do a lot of research. It's not easy working with this stuff and the whole process took way longer than we thought it would. You have to make multiple coats to get it right and drying time is really long, so it's definitely very time consuming to make this. If I could do it again, I would probably just hire a shop to make me a custom plastic shower pan. In the end though, we got it done and we could push forward with the rest of the bathroom. We made a small shelf to put our toiletries on before building out the rest of the walls. After this, we switched gears for a bit and started our gray tank install. This is a pre-made kit from a company called Northwest Conversions and is already fitted for 4 transit vans. We mounted the tank and then connected our drainage from the shower as well as the kitchen sink from before. We also installed a motorized ball valve and made up a drainage hose for emptying our gray tank at dump sites. While waiting for the paint to dry on our shower pan, we quickly installed my office setup on the wall behind the driver's seat, mounted a couple of monitors and made an upper cabinet that would house like computer stuff later. We brought the finished shower pan back in and pushed forward with the bathroom build. We used flashing tape for all the seams as well as painted every surface with red guard to make a waterproof seal. Then we cut out vinyl sheet flooring to use as walls in the bathroom and put everything together. And finally, we installed the Nautilus brand shower door, which is a popular low-weight option for camper van bathrooms. And with that, our camper van was finally complete. This entire process took exactly 159 days of building, spanning over a year mostly on weekends and in between our work schedules. All in all, it was definitely worth it to build it ourselves. Not only were we able to tailor it to our exact needs, but we also learned a ton of valuable skills and have something that we can be proud of. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this one. We'll see you next time.